was a slight change in how City Council opened today's meeting, and the group behind it hopes it leads to bigger changes. ABC 7's Andrew J. Polk is live with this story. Andrew.
Yeah, good afternoon. City Council meetings are usually opened by an invocation, a short appeal by any group that wants to sign up to do it for whatever deity or religion they believe in to bring positive influence to the meeting. But today, a group brought forth what they believe is the first secular invocation in Council's history.
To please turn off his or her cell phone beeper and BlackBerry so as not to disturb the meeting. And now, would everyone please rise for the invocation by David Marcus from the Join Us for Justice, the El Paso chapter of Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Good morning, Mr. Marcus.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and Council. We come together today in a spirit of cooperation and compromise, respect and courtesy, calling upon the rules of civility to guide us. As we look around this chamber, we are reminded that in our differences lie our strengths. We are Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, and Native American. We are Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Jew, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, humanist, Wiccan, pagan, atheist, agnostic, and unaffiliated. Some of us are living our lives in the certainty of our faith. Others of us are still looking for answers or have found them in our common human struggles. We are straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender, with and without disabilities, young and old, and everything in between. We don't all think the same way. Many of us hold very differing views on topics that are important to us. Our political views range from liberal to conservative, and some of us are a bit of both. But we all agree and know that personal beliefs, regardless of how strongly we hold them, are ours alone. Yet, as we gather here together, we are linked by our common heritage, our shared humanity, and our mutual desire to do what is best for the citizens of El Paso. Our city has a long history of saying no to hate and bigotry. And as we move forward, we remember the difficult decisions of our former leaders. Let us continue to build on that legacy. Thank you.
So recently, the state of Indiana passed a bill that would allow for discrimination against members of the LGBT community. It actually would allow for discrimination against almost anyone as long as you had religious grounds for that discrimination. So, of course, there's a lot of people who are upset by this. It is in the Bible, it's in the Quran, it's in a lot of religious texts. And the real answer is you shouldn't believe those texts. But, of course, nobody wants to say that. Those texts are wrong. Slavery is not acceptable. You shouldn't hate gay people. You should also be allowed to eat shrimp, which is also strictly forbidden in the Bible. And now, of course, you can't eat pork either, according to the Old Testament or the Quran. All those things send you to hell. Of course it's religious. That's why they're going to discriminate against these people. Now, would they have discriminated against some set of people, even without religion as a pretext? Probably, because that's what we've done throughout history as human beings, unfortunately. But I love that there is a new day in America, at least, where people fight back against this. And they say it's not acceptable, and we're going to join forces, and we're going to beat you back by using business, by using sports, by using everything in our arsenal.
If a gay couple was to come in, like say they wanted us to provide them pizzas for a wedding, we would have to say no.
Crystal O'Connor and her family are standing firm in their beliefs tonight. They've owned Memories Pizza and Ice Cream in Walkerton for almost 10 years. They pride themselves in owning a business that reflects their religious beliefs.
We're not discriminating against anyone. It's just that's our belief. And everybody has the right to believe anything.
So when Governor Pence signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act into law, the family was not disappointed.
We definitely agree with the bill.
And now the O'Connor family tells me that if a gay couple or a couple belonging to another religion stepped into their restaurant to eat, they would never deny them service. They only say they would just not cater their wedding. Reporting live in Walkerton tonight, Alyssa Marino, ABC 57 News.
tolerance is a two-way street. If you're a print shop and you are a gay man, should you be forced to print God hates fags for the Westboro Baptist Church because they hold those signs up? Should you be forced to do, should the government, and this is really the case here, should the government force you to do that? And that's what these cases are all about. This is about the government coming in and saying, no, we're going to make you do this. And this is where I think we just need some space to say, let's have some tolerance, be a two-way street.
Sarah Warbelow, the legal director for the Human Rights Campaign, the country's largest gay and lesbian civil rights organization. Sarah, good to have you here. You just heard from Senator Santorum, who said this law would have protected a gay business owner from having to do work on something that he finds offensive or discriminatory. Would that have been an important protection to have?
On the contrary, the legislation would have done no such thing. It explicitly allowed individuals to use their religious beliefs to underline other types of laws that provide protections, not only against gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people, but against other religious minorities, and in some instances, against African Americans and Asian Americans as well.
Come from different places. We worship in different ways. We respect every person's freedom to live their beliefs.
No digas errores, no digas mentiras. Bueno, solamente uno, Dios.
We are people of faith. We love what is good in the world. We live to make it better. We follow what we feel in our hearts. As Americans, religious freedom is our first freedom. It is the freedom of conscience, the freedom to think, to act, to follow our beliefs, to speak out.
Justice's 5th evening of Civil Discourse. We began this journey almost 3 years ago in response to some very hateful conversations taking place in our own city council chambers about health care benefits for city employees who were in domestic partner relationships and happened to be members of our gay and lesbian community. At the time, there was no organization that could stand up, defend the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and more importantly, there was nobody who was willing to provide a forum to talk about it. From the ashes of those arguments, Join Us for Justice became a reality, and in the fall of 2013, we joined the National Organization of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, giving us local access to an incredible amount of knowledge, legal expertise, and support. Tonight, I'd like to thank our fantastic board members who worked to plan this evening, including and especially Dr. Karina Ramirez from the Paso Community College. Karina, where are you? Here. There she is in the back of the room. Thank you, Karina. Some of our board have been working the tables outside, but if you're in here, would you all please stand, those that are members of the board? Thank you. Everybody that's on the board has a little, an announcement saying that they're members of Join Us for Justice, that they're wearing lanyards. Thank you, I couldn't remember that. So if you are looking for them and have any questions for them, feel free to approach any of them and ask. They'll be happy to answer them. I also want to thank the El Paso Community College for hosting us here tonight. Join Us for Justice is a nonprofit, non-denominational organization that works to ensure that the wall that separates religion and government remains intact and strong. Fortunately, we live in a diverse community. We each have a unique set of beliefs. Tonight, we are here to show that while we might disagree, we can still respect each other. We aren't here to win or lose. We don't expect any of our panelists tonight to change their minds or yours. We're here to open the doors to better communications in the hopes that we can better understand the reasons for our passions. And in so doing, perhaps you'll leave the room tonight willing to allow for the existence of opinions or behaviors that you don't necessarily agree with. For those of you who wish to help us continue these kind of events, wish to become a member of our organization, or even consider joining our local board to help create a more civil community, we do welcome you. Just approach any of the members wearing those lanyards and ask them. They'll be happy to help you. Becoming a member, donating money, joining our board, or serving on any of our committees, there's room for everybody. And if you believe in what we do, consider contributing in honor of a friend or family member. Your tribute will be recognized on our website, and a personal note will be sent to the person you're honoring, and your family member or friend will receive a one-year membership to Americans United. The moderator and our panelists have these outstanding mugs that you see. These have flowers in them. Each of you that are panelists tonight, you can take these home with the flowers. If anybody in the audience would like to buy mugs, if you haven't already, we have some for sale in the back of the room. Just see the people sitting at the back. They're on sale for $10 each, and they're wrapped and they're ready to give as a gift. Thank you for coming tonight. I'd like to introduce my friend Bob Moore, the editor of the El Paso Times, who's going to moderate tonight's discussion. Bob has been editor of the El Paso Times and vice president of news for the Texas-New Mexico newspaper partnership since October 2011. He previously served as executive editor of the Fort Collins Coloradoan from 2005 to 2011, and in various editing roles at the El Paso Times before that, from 1986 to 2005. Since returning to El Paso, he's directed the Times' award-winning coverage of public corruption in El Paso, particularly in the El Paso Independent School District. He's a board member of United Way, El Paso Center Against Family Violence, the Texas Associated Press Managing Editors, and is the former president of the Colorado Press Association, Texas Associated Press Managing Editors, and the El Paso Child Crisis Center. His wife, Kate, is a journalist and a digital media consultant. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Bob. So thank you for coming tonight, and I hope everybody enjoys this.
Thank you, David. And I'd like to start by inviting you all to join me in a round of applause for Gerald Marcus, who put together that video presentation we saw. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a robust conversation tonight. I've been moderating a number of city council and school board debates over the last couple of months, and this ain't going to be that. This isn't going to be a formal debate where we're going to have timed answers. I really want to encourage a great conversation, and I really want to let all of you be part of that if you wish. So I'll start with a few questions tonight to kind of get the conversation going, but we definitely want to have the audience participate by sharing in their comments. We're fortunate tonight to have a very distinguished and diverse panel to discuss these important issues that revolve around religious freedom. I'll introduce them one by one and invite them to come up and take their place on the stage. Because he traveled the farthest, I'm going to first introduce the Reverend Dr. Sidney G. Hall. Since 1988, the Reverend Dr. Sidney G. Hall III has served as the senior minister of Trinity United Methodist Church, which is located in Austin's historic Hyde Park neighborhood near the University of Texas. In 1992, Trinity voted to be a reconciling congregation welcoming of the LGBTQ community. Trinity is also a church that practices nature-based spirituality, the idea that all of creation is infused with an innate sacredness. The church's interfaith chapel regularly hosts groups consistent with Trinity's values from other living spiritual traditions beyond the scope of Christianity. Reverend Hall, would you please come on up? Next, I'd like to introduce my friend and neighbor, Ann Brannon-Horak. Dr. Ann Brannon-Horak earned her BA in English Literature from the University of Texas at Austin and her MA and PhD in English Literature from Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey. She has taught at the University of Texas at El Paso since 1999 and lectures for religious studies, English, and women's studies. Dr. Horak became director of the Religious Studies program at UTEP in 2010. She teaches classes on major world religions, gender and religion, religion and sacred space, and religion and contemporary issues. Dr. Horak, you want to come on up? Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Yahya Ibrahim. Mr. Ibrahim was born in Egypt and earned a Bachelor of Arts in Information Science from Cairo University with postgraduate study in Information Systems at Sadat Academy for Management Sciences. Mr. Ibrahim moved to El Paso in order to pursue his master's degree in Information Technology from UTEP. He is a database administrator at UTEP, where he is also the advisor for the United Muslim Organization on campus. Mr. Ibrahim is a member of the Islamic Center of El Paso. Please join us. Our next guest is the Reverend Enrique Lopez Escaleta. Father Enrique is pastor at St. John Paul II Parish in Santa Teresa, which is in the Las Cruces Diocese. He graduated from Gadsden High School and entered seminary formation with the Diocese of Las Cruces in 1985 at the House of Formation in Las Cruces while attending New Mexico State University. In 1987, he transferred to IHM Seminary in Santa Fe, where he graduated from the College of Santa Fe with a bachelor's degree in religious studies. He attended the Pontifical Gregorian University, where he earned a master's degree in theology and a licentiate in spiritual theology. He also attended the Pontifical University of St. Thomas, where he earned a licentiate in canon law. Father Enrique was ordained to the priesthood on July 31st, 1993. He has served in several parishes, Holy Cross, Santa Rosa de Lima, Our Lady of Mercy, Holy Family, and St. Anne. Father Enrique, please join us on the stage. Our next panelist is Alex Bonet. Alex is the founder and owner of Certified Translation Services US, also known as El Paso Language Services, which has been serving the Borderplex area since June 2005. CTSU is a full-service translation and interpreting service which specializes in legal, immigration, medical, and scientific translation, supporting a wide variety of world languages. Mr. Bonet himself is a native fluent in English and Spanish and proficient in French and Russian. Mr. Bonet considered himself an irreligious theist for most of his life until the 2012 election. when he became severely disillusioned by the Christian right and what he saw as their attacks against reproductive rights, marriage equality, the separation of church and state, the teaching of science and evolution, recognition of global warming, pay equity, etc. About this time, Mr. Bonet discovered the Freedom from Religion Foundation and subsequently discovered the Voice of Reason. He came to realize he could no longer sustain a belief in a supernatural being and has been committed to spreading positive atheism since. Mr. Bonet, would you join us? And our final panelist this evening is Leon Blevins. Mr. Blevins has been a professor of government at El Paso Community College since 1972. He has a BA degree from Wayland Baptist University and an MA degree from the University of Texas at El Paso. Mr. Blevins has taught at UTEP, Texas Tech University, West Texas State University, and the U.S. Army Sergeant's Major Academy. He is the author of a textbook on Texas government, a political dictionary, and numerous study guides and instructor's manuals. You probably best know him as Uncle Sam from virtually any patriotic holiday. He's always on call to perform that duty whenever the 4th of July or Flag Day rolls around. I believe Mr. Blevins identifies as an evangelical. It's not meant to say he's supposed to be speaking on behalf of all evangelicals today any more than any of the other panelists up here are speaking on behalf of anybody other than themselves. So, Mr. Blevins, it's a pleasure to have you here. Won't you join us up on... we're going to start with just some opening remarks that each of the panelists have been asked to prepare, and we'll just work our way down in the order of introduction. And Reverend Hall, I'd invite you to start us off.
Thank you. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you for welcoming me to El Paso. Wonderful to be here. I've been a pastor for 36 years, and oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. I'm short, even sitting down. I've been a pastor for 36 years, and have been in Austin for most of that time. And obviously, as a pastor, I strongly believe that there's an importance in having a spiritual community. That's been my life work. And as a United Methodist, I'm connected to other Methodists, not just in my town of Austin, but also throughout Methodism. But I also strongly believe that when we begin to cross over a line between church and state, we're in dangerous territory. I've never felt my freedom infringed upon as a pastor. I know that there are certain restrictions. For instance, when I preach on social justice, I might talk about the need for instance, care for the poor and the oppressed. But I don't take that next step and say, and therefore, vote in this way. That's where that line is. And otherwise, I have complete freedom. And but when we begin to enact laws in our legislature and in our country that use the language of religious freedom to discriminate against different groups of people, I get nervous, because I think that this country is founded upon truly religious freedom, and that means the allowance for great diversity. And it seems to me that we're using the language of our heritage to do just the opposite. And so that's my passion and why I think I'm here tonight.
For me, I'm unaffiliated with any religious tradition, but I certainly have a very powerful belief in the greater than ourselves that gets created when people come together. Right? When people come together in community, something bigger than anybody in that community gets created. But unfortunately, that could be a good thing or that could be a bad thing. And we've certainly all, I'm sure, just been so saddened to watch the news media this past week and the ways in which community has come together just in howls of pain about how we have separated ourselves out. And for me, that's one of the real dangers of religion. I think that many of the world's religions do beautiful things And many of the world's religions bring people together in beautiful ways. But also, oftentimes, religion just becomes another way in which we separate ourselves from one another. We become people who are right and people who are wrong, people who are good and people who are bad, people who know and people who don't know, people who should have access to things and people who should be denied access to things. And of course, in this country, we decided a long time ago that we were going to try to fight that impulse. It's an impulse that we all have as human beings, to separate ourselves into categories. But we decided that we were going to legislate, we were going to write legislation in ways that would help us try to overcome that. That separation of the goods and the bads and the rights and the wrongs. And part of that legislation is the separation of church and state. The necessity of saying that no one group gets to decide what everybody else should think and how everybody else should behave. And that's something that protects everyone, as the video that Gerald so beautifully put together demonstrated. That type of legislation protects both the religious and the non-religious. And it protects every kind of religion. And so it's important for us to know it, to have our understanding of it, and to be willing to stand up and defend it when we feel like it's being challenged.
Yes, it's not for any religion to say the justice, or for any group of human beings to say like this is correct or this is wrong. But it's for the one who create. I do believe it's for the one who create to say what is wrong and what is right. And this is like very well known from the time of Jesus. This is in the Bible. This is in the Quran. It was ordained by God about what is right and what is wrong. But what you see in justice is not related to God. It's related to us, the human being, greedy of the human being. We could disagree. We could like argue. But in the end, we are from this single man and single woman. Means I am your brother and you are my brother, even though if you are wrong or if I am wrong, it's not for you to judge. The one who will judge all of us is a creator.
I will speak from the perspective of my Catholic faith. Religious freedom is a human right. By this, it is understood that the human person is a religious being, in a similar way that he is a social being. It is in his or her very nature. The fact that we have been created with intelligence and freedom means that we are responsible and that the decisions we make must be in conformity with the truth. In this process of making decisions, the personal conscience plays a key role. The personal conscience of each individual is inviolable. No one can be forced to believe. No one can be forced to not believe. No one can be forced to betray his or her own conscience. It is clear that our Constitution calls for a secular state, not a religious state. We do not have a state religion. It is also clear that the government has no right to curtail the free exercise of religion. By the free exercise of religion, I do not understand merely the freedom of religious worship. This simply means that each individual is free to worship God according to his or her own beliefs within the confines of a religious service. Freedom of religion is far more extensive than that. It means that men and women of faith have something to contribute to the common good. In a similar way, men and women of no faith have something to contribute to the common good. Denying this contribution from segments of the society will only impoverish the common good. It would be very difficult to explain the development of our country without the participation and contribution of men and women of faith. What would the civil rights movement have been without the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Unjust discrimination, and I underscore unjust, is a personal affront and it harms the common good. The church does not impose her doctrines. She proposes what she believes. The church recognizes the human dignity of each individual by teaching that we have been created in the image and likeness of God. Each human person is endowed with dignity, value, and worth. Thank you.
As the newest leader of El Paso Atheists, of course, we represent probably one of the least trusted groups of Americans, but nonetheless, we are very much Americans.
That's okay, I work for a newspaper, so I got you covered.
Of course, we include atheist agnostics. We're a group of people who basically do not hold any belief in the supernatural or severely doubt the possible existence of the supernatural. Therefore, while we may disagree or be in conflict at what level we do or do not believe in a supreme being, we are all in agreement that we do feel that all organized religion does hold one common root, and that is that all are man-made. So to impose one's religious beliefs in government will create mayhem for all others. For those who do not agree, and with the 32,000 some odd religions being practiced currently on this planet, who can say that they have the right one? Who can say that they have the right to impose their beliefs upon others? So we, as atheists, we definitely support the separation of church and state. Many of us are former theists, especially here in the United States. We were raised in a religious family. A lot of us still have, well, obviously, we live among religion. We work to get along with people of different faiths. We want to coexist in peace and harmony. But the only way is to respect that religion stays in your church, it stays in your family. It is not to be spread through our government.
I have a television program. It's called Perspectives El Paso. It's been on 8 years. Most of you have not seen it. It's on KCOS on Sunday morning at 11:30. That's when a lot of people are in church, by the way. And it's also on Time Warner. I have cards over here close to the screen. On that counter, if you want to get a card, it shows when the program comes on. Also, I have over there, if you would like to get one. In 1986, I designed an annotated copy of the U.S. Constitution. And the very far right side there is the Bill of Rights. A few months ago, I had Mr. Marcus on my television show, and earlier I had him on talking about Join Us for Justice, and recently we talked about the First Amendment. And so if any of you want one of these, as far as they'll go, there's some stacked over there on that front counter. If we run out, then you can probably pick one up at a TV studio. It's in the back hallway over here, and you would simply call, get the number off the card, call Sarah, and tell her you're on the way to pick up one of these. So I'll make sure next Monday I'll come by and leave a stack with her. So that's the announcement there about this. By the way, you can also find some of these programs on YouTube. You go to YouTube and then type in Perspectives El Paso. If you scroll down near the bottom, you can see an interview I had with Mr. Marcus, and I was dressed as James Madison, the father of the Constitution. He was quite shocked when I walked in that day doing an interview dressed as James Madison talking about the Bill of Rights. Quick comment about religion. And by the way, I've pastored Baptist and interdenominational churches in Texas, California, and New Mexico, as well as teaching political science. That's quite a mix. I'm often asked this question: why is religion so divisive? Why has religion led to major wars in world history? And my answer to that usually is that we have different visions of truth. We grew up in a family, and our family teaches us what is the truth about our race, our ethnicity, the truth about religion, and most of us, we stay with the religion that we're born into. But sometimes we switch, as we heard tonight. Some people make a decision and leave their religion. In some religions, you are disowned by your family if you leave, or other bad things happen to you, including death. Religion can be very mean as well as very good. My feeling about this is that people that are religious, they have those values in their DNA, in a sense, is they begin to believe that theirs is the truth. And others that have different beliefs, they don't have the truth. That means they're living a lie, and that can lead to terrible consequences. If you don't believe that, look at ISIS over in the Middle East, killing Christians, beheading Christians, because those people, they're radicals, of course, radical jihadists. Some say they're not really Muslims, that they are simply doing it for political and economic purposes. But they're using their power in order to get at people because they believe they have the truth. Separation of church and state says we believe we have some truth, you have some truth, and we have different perspectives on the truth. Now then that gets you into philosophical debate of what is the truth. But I think that's what we're getting at with this organization. is that we believe in tolerance. You just saw a good deal of tolerance on the screen. We make choices with our religions as to whether we're going to do good things or we're going to do bad things.
God's word is love, to love each other. As we said, we could disagree, we could argue, exactly like two brothers in one home. We could disagree, we could fight, but in the end, it's not for you to judge me or I judge you. The one who will judge every one of us is the one who creates.
People really feel like their point of view and their perspective is not only the truth, but normative. You know, this is how normal people think. And there's not an understanding that many other people approach things in different ways. And really, this is an extremely immature way of approaching the world. This is how children see the world, right? So kids, when they go and visit their friend's house and they eat dinner at their friend's house and their parents serve something that they're unfamiliar with, kids say, "That's weird. We don't eat that. You guys are weird and we're normal." As we grow up and mature, we understand that there is no one normative way of looking at the world. But we still have politicians and religious leaders that pretend as if there's one normative way of seeing things. And that normative way is based upon their idea of some absolute and universal truth. And so then they want to make sure that everybody sees things their way, and everybody that deviates from that is abnormal. And that is the bedrock, I think, of many of our issues about race right now, many of our debates around marriage equality and rights for the LGBT community, many of our debates around women's issues, is that there is a normative and an abnormal. And of course, that's simply not true. That's how a child sees the world, not how an adult who understands that different people have different approaches sees the world.
There may only be one person in the room who is of a different faith or of no faith at all. And they need to feel protected and affirmed just as the majority. And when you begin to impose religion across the boundaries of state, you infringe upon that person's right.
To impose my truth on anyone else is a violation of the personal dignity of that person. I do not have the right to do violence based on the truth. In fact, I am dishonoring the splendor of the truth, the beauty of the truth.
Well, the definition of religion is whatever my unsubstantiated beliefs are in the supernatural. That constitutes a religion. A superstition is your unsubstantiated beliefs in the supernatural. In other words, if I believe it, it's all good. It's a religion. If you believe it, that's a different story. So who has the choice to make that? Who has the choice to decide who's practicing a religion and who's practicing a superstition?
Isn't it true that religious beliefs, much like beliefs based on other ethics or value systems, evolve over time, as much as we like to talk about universal truths? Don't these beliefs change as society changes?
There is no one way that marriage is looked at in the Bible, and there's certainly no view of marriage in the Jewish and Christian Bible that I think that any woman in the 21st century would want to be a part of, or want our daughters to be a part of, or our sons for that matter. Views on marriage have evolved from women as property, from multiple women and one man. And so this idea that you can say with a straight face there is a Christian version of marriage is based in the Bible. People are told in the Bible how to treat their slave girls, how to treat their, the women that they sleep with, who owns those children. It's evolved, and so we have to take into account the many ways in which our understandings of those texts have changed, and no longer do we see the texts in the same way. And so when people want to read the texts literally, they really are coming up against a very difficult proposition there, because it's almost impossible.
When you have a BMW car, BMW, and it broke, where do you take it? Do you take it to Toyota? Do you take it to Mazda, or you take it to BMW? You take it to BMW. Why? Because BMW knows every component. Therefore, God, when He sent His religion, He sent His religion while He knows how we feel. We are different. There is black, there is white. There is some people will believe, some people will not believe. He knows very well. The problem is there is no universal religion. There is the religion of God, and there is our version or the way we think. Like, for example, ISIS. Is this the religion which God revealed as a message? Really, I have a lot of doubt about this, because God said, like, don't let the injustice of others lead you to commit injustice. Be just in all the cases. Even though if the person against you, he treat you with injustice, don't return injustice. No, deal with justice, because God will deal with us in the day of judgment according to what we did. And is not equal someone give charity, or someone he serve his community, and someone he steal money from the people, and someone who kill people. They are not equal. This has to take his rights, and this has to take his punishment.
From a Catholic perspective, we believe that there is a hierarchy of truths. By this, we mean that not all truths have equal value. For us, the belief that God exists is an absolute truth. And then for us to believe whether we can eat meat on Fridays or not does not have the same importance as the first truth. So first of all, there is a difference in terms of the value of the truths. Again, it does not mean that all truths are relative. This would lead to moral relativism, which would be the disintegration of society. If in this room, there's about 100 of us here, if each one of us has our own truth, we wouldn't be able to get out of the parking lot in one piece. There would be no right of way. Everybody, it would be a free-for-all, it would be chaotic. So there are truths that are absolute, that do not change with time. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The understanding of it, for sure, that changes. The cultural circumstances, the development of the understanding of it, of course, it's a pedagogical truism. We teach a child according to the capacity to understand. But the truth, in terms of its absolute value, we hold to that.
Christian religions throughout the centuries has talked about a leap of faith. A God that we cannot see. We don't worship rocks and stones and the sun and things like that. So if you're worshiping an unseen God, whether you're Islamic, or Christian, whatever brand of Christianity, it's still a leap of faith as to whether you believe the stories or not.
People in their 70s get married all of the time, and they're obviously not going to have children. There are plenty of opposite-sex marriages where children are not going to be an issue. I'm hoping somebody would disagree or take the opposing viewpoint here, but it seems to me that sort of historic argument is breaking down rather quickly as society evolves. Again, maybe it comes back to the basic question of whether government and religion should be interlinked as they are with marriage now. But how do you individually address the relationship between marriage and children as it applies to your faith tradition, to your beliefs in a civil context?
That has not been the historic reality, even in our own country, which is pretty young, much less in many other countries. There have been concubines, there have been slaves, there have been lots of different ways that people have children, and they're not recognized legally, they're not recognized as part of some ideal family unit.
Don't you think that same-sex marriage is going to destroy the institution of marriage? I said, I don't think so. I think it's going to go on. And besides, heterosexuals are doing a very good job destroying marriage. We have a 50% divorce rate, and we have a terrible epidemic of domestic abuse. No, homosexuals getting married are not going to destroy the institution.
Robert Hall?
I went early, I guess, was, my congregation voted to be what's called a reconciling congregation in the United Methodist Church, which is a church that welcomes and affirms LGBTQ people. And we did that in 1992, and at that point, we began to have same-sex unions. They weren't legal because it was legal nowhere at that time, but in the United States. But we had them. And then in 1996, our own denomination created a rule saying that clergy were forbidden to conduct same-sex unions, and they were forbidden from being in our churches. And at that point, my congregation said that if we're not allowed to conduct same-sex unions in our church, we will no longer have heterosexual weddings in our church as well. And that has been the case since that time. What I realize is that even though I love children, I would believe in marriage even if I couldn't have children biologically. That I was taught in my church that marriage was about faithfulness, love, fidelity, commitment, those kinds of values. And I just happen to be one of those people that believe that gay and lesbian people can hold those same values as heterosexuals. When I went into ministry, my commitment was to treat people with respect and honor. And that means that when I see love, and I see people who want to celebrate that love, I'm going to find a way to help them celebrate that, commit that to that. So that's my position on it.
I've heard opponents to same-sex marriage say that same-sex marriage is being forced upon us, these certain religious groups. And I ask myself, how is it being forced upon you? Is anybody saying that we have to attend same-sex weddings? Do we have to buy gifts for same-sex couples? No, no. And another thing, the naysayers who are saying, what's going to happen? Is same-sex marriage, are they one day going to outlaw heterosexual marriages? I don't think that's going to happen either. Going back to the evidence, seeing what we see, it's just like in the early 1920s, or when women got the right to vote nationwide. It was predicted that within 50 years, women would overrun the government, that men would lose their right to vote. Well, here we are nearly 100 years later, and that is so far from the truth.
We believe that marriage is a natural institution. It is in the nature of men and women, in the complementarity of man and woman. And so when we say that then marriage can also be between members of the same gender, of course, again, it just brings in a new reality into the social mix. So of course, it does change. It would be the same as when divorce became more widespread, when separation. Those are societal changes.
The fact that divorce is legal in and of itself doesn't impact my marriage at all. That's up to the life we lead, and that's where I'm having a hard time understanding that for the people who are married in the Catholic tradition, how is the fact that somebody is being married in a different tradition impacting their lives?
A gay or lesbian marriage doesn't change my heterosexual marriage at all. If anything, it requires me to say, what is my marriage based on? Is it based on the fact that I am heterosexual? Do I love this person? Am I committed to the institution of marriage because I happen to be heterosexual? No, not at all. I'm committed to it because I believe that it's a good thing for people to join together with another person and have a witness for their life and share in that intimacy and that challenge. And I think that if anything, gay marriage in this country will help us think about what marriage really is about.
Years ago, what was it? It was Good Morning America. Charles Gibson asked the oldest doctor they could find in the country was still practicing. She was about 100 years old, a pediatrician. He asked her, what do you think is the most significant change in healthcare in all of your years of medicine? And she said one word, vaccinations. She said that has saved more people, probably in our country, than just about anything. And so I would still list that as a very present danger for certain illness.
Has been proven, pretty substantially is that STD rates and teen pregnancy rates are higher in very fundamentalist religious communities. That includes fundamentalist Jewish communities, fundamentalist Christian communities, and fundamentalist Muslim communities actually have higher rates of teen pregnancy and STDs. That seems completely counterintuitive. That seems to make absolutely no sense at all. But when some of these young people are asked, they are afraid to talk to their parents. So they have never have been given the proper education, nor have they ever had a conversation with their parents about sex, about sexuality. Maybe a conversation with their parents would have helped them choose abstinence. Maybe a conversation with their parents would have helped them choose a form of birth control that worked for them. Or if they were not comfortable talking with their parents, talking with teachers, educators, counselors. So, one of the issues that I just want to bring us back to is the importance of being able to have conversations around topics that we are very uncomfortable talking about. And, we're all here tonight. There's a few people who look to me young-ish, but there's not, there's certainly no high school kids here. There's no junior high kids here. And all of these issues that we're discussing they're the ones that they're going to impact the most. These decisions that are being made right now about religion's role in our culture are really going to impact our young people. So it's up to us to have these same kinds of conversations with our young people. If you're a person of faith, certainly have it in the context of your faith, but still have it. Have that conversation and bring in the fact that there are other people who are going to think differently, and invite young people in your life to consider that there's more than one way of looking at all of these topics that we're discussing.
If we want to teach the story of Genesis in our Sunday school, then we should do that. But we shouldn't impose that on our science books. I think these lines should be more defined, and I see us moving down a path where they're getting fuzzier and fuzzier, and that scares me.
We need to get over this business of condemning everybody and saying everybody's going to go to hell that commits a sin that I'm not committing.
Regardless of your feelings on same-sex marriage, does everybody agree that Father Enrique, as a Catholic priest, cannot be compelled to perform a same-sex marriage?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I think churches have been free to practice bigotry in this country since the foundation of the country. I don't see why we should change that now.
Yes, because, I've been following this same-sex equality. And I don't see how anybody else's marriage affects my own. It drives me crazy. And then listening to the Supreme Court justices saying that, the churches are going to be forced to perform these marriages. And it's in the First Amendment. It's never happened. And this is a Supreme Court justice who doesn't even believe in his own, only the rules of the United States. And it drives me crazy. It's scary, and it's going to affect my daughter and her choices and her path. And I resent that. Increasing inequality is a good thing, not a bad thing.
The real issue is the rich taking over the world, the corporations fucking everything up, and these issues are being used, religion is being used as the tool to manipulate the population. And that's why religion is bullshit.
So there was a relatively recent case of a woman, I can't recall if it was in Indiana, in your state, or if it was in Wisconsin, was 24 months pregnant, was critically ill, was ordered by a judge to have a cesarean section. Even though that was not her choice, she did not consent to it. She was under court order to do it. Under protest, she had the cesarean. She died. The fetus also died. So here's a case in which the state did intervene very forcefully in somebody's individual freedom under a law that many would say was religiously inspired, a fetal personhood law.
It's very clear. The revelation of God came to fix your life, exactly like the manual of the car. When the car dealer give you the manual telling you this is the instruction. If you follow the instruction, your car will live for good long time. It's the same idea. We have a creator. This creator knows what is good and what is bad. This is what I meant. But the practice of the religious leader who misbehave this is because of their humanity. They follow their desire. It's not because God ordered them to steal the money of the people. God didn't order them to kill each other. God loves every one of you as long as you are just and fair for others. The minute, in my belief, the minute God will punish you, this is the minute you will be unfair. And this is my belief.
My role as a priest is in the religious, moral, spiritual formation of my congregation. Now, do we as a religious institution have a right to speak up in defense of human life? Yes, in a pluralistic society, we have a right to speak up. And so from a Catholic perspective, we believe that every human person is created in the image and likeness of God. Every human person is endowed with that dignity and should be respected, including the unborn child. Can we impose that? I already answered that earlier. No. It is only through persuasion, through presentation of moral arguments that are reasonable, that are coherent, but not through.
But part of persuasion, though, is also the political part of persuasion, to persuade legislatures to adopt laws that support your beliefs, whether they're religious beliefs or other kinds of beliefs. The church has been active in those conversations, whether that's part of an active campaign or not, we can talk about. But certainly the church has been involved in the political process as it impacts the courts and legislation.
Yes, because we are part of a polity. We are part of a community, a society that is organized politically, and therefore we are members. We are not just, we're not in a ghetto. We are citizens. We have to engage in the public discourse. Democracy is not a done deal. Democracy is an experiment, and it can get messy. I cannot tell my congregation who to vote for. That would be an infringement of their own consciences. My role is to form their consciences, to provide the principles. Then the lay people, not me as a priest, the lay people, they are the ones that have to run for office and get engaged. And as citizens, as Catholics, we believe that voting is a moral responsibility. We have to vote. But that's how we engage the democratic process.
You often hear churches who are very interested in the regulation of the female body, but they're not interested in talking about, why it is that some women's children are unadoptable, or some women are in a position where they have so many children and they're unable to support them. I mean, there's fundamental issues of racism, of economic inequality and economic injustice that are part and parcel of a woman's decision about how many children to have, whether or not to have children. There's fundamental issues of sexism, of abuse of women that are part and parcel of the fact that many women find themselves pregnant unwillingly with a child that they may or may not want. So you can't just have a discussion about one piece of it, which often is what happens. It's a discussion of typically men regulating women's bodies. It's all part and parcel of many difficult issues, which include race and sexism and economic inequality. And you don't hear religion speaking on that as often as do hear them speaking on how women's bodies should be regulated and how the act of sex should be regulated.
You can't be an atheist and be a politician in this country. It's not possible. I mean, at least it doesn't seem so, And I think that's something that we do have to, and not just atheists, it could be Muslim or it could be like Hindi or something, you just don't see it. If it is, it's on a very small localized level and extremely rare.
I think right now we have 2 Muslim members of the House and 1 Hindi member of the House, which never happened before. I'm not aware of a single avowed atheist in either the House or
We
the
have
Senate?
3 currently in Congress. We have 1 about atheists and then 2 who are irreligious, but do not wish to state one way or the other exactly if they're atheists or what, but it makes a total of 3 in a Congress of 535. So while the nuns here in the U.S. we're at least 20% of the population, if not greater, but in Congress we're less than 1%.
I serve as a pastor here in El Paso Community, the United Methodist Church, and the separation of church and state, the freedom for religion and the freedom from religion, something that's kind of gaining a groundswell throughout the country in little pockets, is looking forward for the next political campaign that's going to be going on. And Billy Graham's son, Franklin Graham, has been more and more vocal over the last year. Some of you may remember Franklin Graham coming to El Paso, doing rallies. But part of his rally cry now, in looking forward, is trying to be as specific as possible, and is starting a new rally campaign to make sure that he goes to at least every state and probably multiple points in the state to help communities discern the specific religious ideals and the specific religious leaders and Christian politicos that they would like to promote. And his whole foundation is going to be launching this, I believe, starting this fall. Now, me personally, that causes much trepidation. And so, as religious leaders, as professors, secular, non-secular, and for the promotion of the separation of church and state, how can you help equip this audience tonight and audiences in the future to have a civil discourse in response to that?
Go to the League of Women Voters website and they will tell you what all the candidates feel about specific issues, and then make a decision based on how you feel about specific issues. But certainly if Franklin Graham's organization is a nonprofit, if it's a 501c3, then he's going to get himself in trouble by doing that. But you know, we all have different beliefs, and we all, of course, we all choose candidates that most align with our own beliefs. That's part of our process. But you know, for a religious person to do that, if they are at the head of a nonprofit, then they're breaking the law. They may or may not like the law, but it is our current law.
I will say that I've thought about what I say on Facebook is different than what I would say in the pulpit. And so when I speak at Facebook, I do that as a private citizen. And so I will share my political views there. And I've been unfriended by most of my childhood friends in Indiana. But I do not do that when I teach classes, when I represent the church. I just feel like that would be a violation. But there may be some who feel that it would be a violation to even do that privately, since in some ways I represent my job everywhere I go. I mean, that's how I was introduced tonight.
Yeah, you're never not the pastor of your church.
Right. So I don't know the answer to that. That's an interesting thing to raise.
I appreciate all this, all these different opinions and all. I am Reverend Ken Snelson. I've been a pagan priest since about the 1970s. I am a Wiccan priest. I am also members of the clergy in 2 non-sectarian churches. I can perform weddings and things like that. When Texas legalizes same-sex marriages, I'm going to get out of retirement and go into the married business again. And I'm sure that I'll be able to trade my Honda for a Cadillac. I'm looking forward to that. But I've been very active in the pagan community here in El Paso in years gone by, and also in Las Cruces and Alamogordo to an extent. I have conducted many, many rituals. I am not exactly an atheist, but I don't believe in the Christian God. I believe in a goddess, Mother Nature. And I have become somewhat involved with Native Americans. I am part Native American. And I've become somewhat involved with Native American rituals. And I find that their beliefs are very much nature-oriented and are very much the same as mine as a Wiccan priest. And I just wanted to get in my 2 bits worth here. And you know, we've got people of various religious beliefs and non-beliefs up here on the stage. But there are a lot of pagans around too. And we deserve to have a bit of a say-so about things. And I'm very much against government and religion influencing each other. And I guess that's about all I have to say, except thank you very much for being here, folks. And I guess it's safe for me to say, thank God I'm an atheist.
And sir, blessed be to you.
When I can make people laugh, it makes my whole day. And a little later this evening, I'll be making people laugh at a club up a little ways from here. I'll be singing karaoke. Hey, I'm still young. I'm only 84 years old. So, thank you for the microphone. It's dangerous to let me have a microphone.
Thank you. I believe religion and state must be separate. I love to be a citizen of the United States. And I think this is the best place to allow the discourse like this take place.
A number of years ago, my wife and I attended a church, and I've noticed I've been observing politics, teaching, and writing about it for over 50 years. And we were attending an evangelical church here in town, and I noticed when evangelicals began to turn out and go to conventions, I'd been going to them for years, they started going when they heard Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell on the television set, telling them to get busy, get active, the homosexuals were going to take over the world, abortion is terrible, etc., etc. And what bothered me so much about that particular church was they started putting out these voters' guides put out by these organizations, locked off, and they told you who were good and who were bad. One day my wife and I are walking out the car after church service, and I pick up about 100 or so or more, and I'm walking away with them, and she says, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why did you call those up?" And I said, "I'm going to throw them in the trash until nobody else gets any." And so that's the way I deal with my frustration.
Sure. My name is Raul Gonzalez, and since we're kind of wrapping up here, I wanted to add a little bit of excitement to this event. I've been to a few of these type of sessions, and I like that we all tend to pat each other in the back and shake each other's hands and talk about how we're all not people to judge other people, and that we are our own individual selves. But I think of all the religious people here, you're all of the Abrahamic faiths. I feel like that is not generally the case outside of this realm. I feel like in the history of each of your faiths, and in my opinion, in your written words, violence is heavily used. You, sir, I would agree with you politically the most. However, I feel like you are the furthest from your own religion.
Probably so.
And my question is, how do you reconcile that where the book of Leviticus says for homosexuality that death is the punishment for it, and I believe there are some hadiths that say that to kill the one who is committing the homosexuality, the one who is doing it, and the one who is receiving it. So how do you all manage to come up here and in your own faiths be able to say it's not my place when throughout your history and in many places in the world for people who are practicing religions, that is not what they're doing?
Amen.
The way that we deal with it in the Christian community that I've been associated with for years is that the New Testament, the New Covenant, is more important than the Old Testament. Of course, that got Jesus in trouble when he came with his teachings, the Beatitudes and all those things. Not long ago, a woman came into a session I was in, a Bible session, and she said that homosexuals were destroying America. We need to get rid of all of them. I said, okay, what do you do? You want to kill all of them? Oh, no, well, no. I said, what, you want to cast the first stone? Isn't that what Jesus said? He that is without sin, let him cast the first stone. Now, I have some friends that believe in reparative therapy, that you can make homosexuals straight. And all they need is just more and more counseling. Really close friends that believe that. And so I'm bothered by this, of such negative things, and the dwelling on the Old Testament vengeance kind of things, instead of the New Testament forgiveness kinds of things.
The New Testament for me, the Old Testament for you, the people that I don't like.
Well, the New Testament, that's what I go by, the New Testament. I know some of the Old Testament, certainly, but I go by the, as I mentioned a while ago, law of love. Jesus, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they do. It doesn't matter what the sin. I mentioned a while ago, some people have sins that they are doing, but they go after other people's sins. And so that's what I believe.
And for me, it's not a matter of Old Testament, New Testament. The Hebrew Scriptures, as well as the Christian Testament, are wonderful reflections of what people believed in the formations of those two particular religions, of Judaism and Christianity. And they provide a window in helping us understand what in the world they were thinking and believing at the time. I think they often tell more about the people that wrote it rather than the people they were writing about. But I'm not a literalist with any literature, including the Bible, including the New Testament and the Hebrew Scriptures. And so for me, on a different day, I can unpack each of those 7 verses, the 5 in Leviticus and the 2 in Paul's writings, 1 in Romans and 1 in Corinthians. I can unpack those and talk about what they're saying and what they're not saying and the projections we put into them. But if I found that I disagreed with them, I wouldn't have any hesitation in saying that surely, even if it's in the Bible, cannot be the Word of God. If it leads to the oppression of people, to the diminishment of people, anyone, I don't want any part of that. And I don't think my religion should have any part of that.
Is it like everyone has his own choice. This man who chooses to have the same-sex marriage, he has his own choice. And I have my own choice to disagree with him. And when I disagree, I prefer the command of God over my desire. And I do believe the human being should have some gratefulness to the Creator. Exactly like you have to have some grateful to your dad and your mom, because you grow up in their house, they clean you, they take care of you. You have to be thankful to them, correct? Likewise, the one who gave me the life, I am grateful to him to the extent I listen and obey. If someone decides not to listen and obey, this is his choice. God said, like the wrong way is distinguished from the right way. Therefore, God gives you these tools to think and to choose for yourself. But I do believe there is a day I will be brought to justice and he will ask me why you did, and I have to report for him, I did this because. Therefore, if you are ready, for example, to meet God saying, I do believe the homosexuality is something right, this is something, it's between you and him, it's not between you and me. Okay? Therefore, I disagree. This is to make it sure and clear. I disagree because there is a text, as you said, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, and in the Quran, prohibited this. But if there is a problem in the gender and you need to correct by medical operation, feel free to do it.
We distinguish between the person and the sin. And so as Jesus taught, has no one condemned you, no one, neither do I, go and sin no more. So the compassion, the mercy, the love of God that is there for every individual. And we're sinners, and so we need the mercy of God. But we need to distinguish between the person and between the sinner and the sin.
A couple of our panelists have stated that man is born with a rational mind. I think if that was true, we wouldn't be here. I would ascribe to René Descartes' statement that we are born with a tabula rasa, blank page, and from that point forward, we're being brainwashed by the culture, the country, the society that we're enveloped in. I believe that what we believe to a large extent is the result of who we're born to, when we're born, and where we're born. And most people never get out of that paradigm. It's so much easier to go with the flow than to think outside the box, to try to think rationally. And the problem that we're having in this country is we've got a party, a political party, that is ascribing to this idea that this country was founded on Christian principles, which those of us who believe that we studied the Constitution and our history would argue that they're wrong. They established a secular government, not a religious government. And so that's basically my thought on that this country is in a real fix if we get these people imposing their religious beliefs and trying to translate them into public law. That's why I'm here, and I'm glad those of you showed up and believe similarly. Thank you.
I think in many cases we view people with different points of view as almost foreign to us. We have no concept of their life or how they came to these beliefs. And there was an interesting study that came out a couple of weeks ago that looked at rising partisanship in the country. And it was not based on the love of your own party. It was based on the hatred of the other party. Wow. So how do we have conversations like this in a world like that? People aren't willing and not even interested. They just want to crawl into an echo chamber and have their beliefs reinforced. How do we break free from that? And this is a question for religion, it's a question for media, and it really permeates all of our society. So I'm just interested in some thoughts on that.
One thing it makes me think of, and this kind of goes to the point you were bringing up earlier, I teach religious studies, and usually when I'm teaching my major world religions class and we're learning about all different religions, there's always that point in the semester, and I usually can engage when we've just about hit that point in the semester, and I'll have 2 or 3 students say to me, aren't all religions really one? And unfortunately they're not. That's a really nice idea. And we like to make bumper stickers, that have all the symbols and stuff like that. But it's more complicated than that. I mean, there are a lot of similarities. That's what brings those students to that kind of statement. Aren't all religions really one? There are a lot of similarities, and many of the similarities have to do with how we treat each other. Most religions have some version of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or don't do unto others as you would not, don't treat others as you would not like to be treated. Most religions have something like that. Certainly the Wiccan Rede includes that, as does, many of the faith traditions represented up here. The humanists agree with that. The difference is, how the religions view God. And that, I think, is where the problem lies, because different religions view God in different ways, and then they decide that there's a certain way that God wants them to live and behave and act, and that way is right and other ways are wrong. And so even if they are tolerant of other religions and want to be loving towards other religions, there's still an us versus them and a right and wrong creation there. And it's based on a human belief that you can fully understand and comprehend what your deity wants you to do, which for many of us is a fallacy at best. If God can be completely comprehended, then God loses all meaning as a God. So it's based on this belief that we can fully comprehend what God wants, And it's the only thing that God wants, and everything else is wrong. So it sets up, again, we're back to what I was saying at the beginning, it sets up an us versus them. So the only way to have, I think, civil conversations is to understand that this is what I believe. As many of our panelists have said tonight, they've been very clear to say, I'm speaking from my belief position. My belief position leads me to X, Y, Z. But I understand that there are people who have another belief position. That way of talking is the only way we're going to be able to have a civil discourse. Because if we say, this is what I believe, and if you don't believe it, you're wrong and you're going to hell, we've lost all possibility of having a civil discourse, and we're back to this sort of irrational argument that I, as a human being, have a complete understanding of what a deity wants, which takes all meaning out of the word deity to begin with. So I think it's, if religions could refocus on the one thing that they do share, which is an idea of treating each other with respect, they would have a greater chance of having civil discourse.
I do think that thank you, that is right on. Yes. I think that, let's just take Facebook, for instance. One of the problems with Facebook is that it creates a false sense of intimacy over great distances. And so some of those people that have unfriended me and that I have unfriended, I am sure that if we were able to sit down and spend some time together, we could work through a lot of issues. We might not come to a place of agreement, but we may come to a place of respectful disagreement. And I think that that is lacking and requires an intimacy. It requires an intimacy that we're often not willing to do. And so I'm guilty of it. I tend to hang out with the people that think like me, that believe like me, because that's comfortable. But I know that that if we're going to make any headway, all of us are going to have to find some way of committing to step out of our comfort zone and to find ways to respectfully dialogue with people, not as, like you said, David, at the beginning, not to convince people of our own views, but to truly hear each other and find a place of respecting one another. It's not going to fix everything, but it's going to take us a great distance from where we are right now, I think.
I'll probably just be repeating what has already been said, so very, very quickly, listening, which is very tough. It's a very difficult task, but listening and then just the personal encounters, I believe that would be a wonderful way of continuing with this task.
Education is the answer. We've got to educate the people in the world, which is getting harder and harder, so they will not believe in I'm right and you're wrong, so I'm going to kill you. We have to live in unison. The world is in danger in a lot of ways. And we have to work together. If we don't, we're doomed.
I'm going to go gentlemen back, and then we'll come up to you for probably what will be the last comment.
Thank you. And I'm also a member of the so-called atheist community here in El Paso. And one thing that I believe that we should stop doing is stereotyping one another. For instance, all atheists hate religion or want to destroy religion, or all religious people are out to get us, or everybody who's evangelical is against the separation of church and state, or everybody who's religious is in favor of a theocracy. Empirically speaking, that doesn't cut it. I believe that the panelists here have shown us that everybody here is willing to accept that even though their beliefs tell us that something about gay marriage, about abortion, they are willing to say, let's talk about this, let's try to persuade one another and not impose our views on one another. Whenever we say, all religions do this, or all non-religious people do that, right there we are already erring. Right there we're already making a mistake. We're making an unempirical assumption. And I believe that you guys show that religion can be on the side of progressive values, on the side of social justice. And those of you who have expressed that and respect for the separation of church and state, I have to say thank you.
when the progressive people sitting here get drowned out by the more radical factions of their faiths, stereotyping becomes very easy. But it's very good that we're having this meeting tonight and we can sit and discuss this like mature adults. But unfortunately, these meetings are few and far between. It is my hope that we'll have more of these.
And just a clarification, like if a Muslim spoke to you about his religion, don't take it he is like discriminating against you. Don't take it like it's exactly, try to take it as like, I am here, this is my neighbor. I have one apple. Or I believe this is an apple. Therefore I'm telling him, share it with you. If he said no, this is up to him. If he decides to share it, it's also up to him. Therefore, usually, the good people, when they believe they could help, they go to help. Like when I find, like, for example, there is a nice way to advise people, I go to my friend saying, the way to advise people is this way. Don't try to be rush on them. Therefore, if a Muslim try to share with you his belief, this is because he think like it's something beautiful only. It's not because God said, as I said for you, it's clear. Like you have the freedom to whatever you would like to believe in, believe in. But as we said, everyone will bear his consequence in the day of judgment.
But so, what is the right way to go about pointing out like clear violations of the separation of church and state? Say at school, like when your kids come home and tell you about the Bible verses on the walls, you know, teachers asking who's a Christian, who's a Muslim, you know, bringing that kind of stuff. So who do you go to?
The newspaper.
To the newspaper.
Yeah. I'm serious. I mean, that's
ACLU.
And the ACLU is a really effective organization. But I think shedding public light on these kinds of issues are always very, very critical. So I think going to the media is always a very good first step. And there are all kinds, and call David too. I mean, Americans United is another great organization that can, if nothing else, give you a quick read on whether this is worth pursuing if you wanted to take it to court or something like that.
Funny enough, you know, I went to EPISD's Facebook page and let them know what, you know, I had experienced, which was the use of the government telephone system that they had. They sent out automated calls recruiting for a Christian church dance group that meets after school. You know, it's part of the youth group, part of the church. You know, so I left a thing on their Facebook that said, hey, really, that's ridiculous, you gotta stop. Funny enough, they sent me a message back right away. Oh my gosh, yeah, we had no idea. But something tells me really that they really don't care. I mean, unless they're proven to have been doing it, you know, to everyone.
But sometimes they do. Sometimes it's not just going to the newspaper or the ACLU. It's going to the teacher, to the principal. And sometimes they just haven't thought about it. They just go, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I'm sorry. And so sometimes you can cut it off before it becomes a really big thing. One quick story, my oldest child was in elementary school. She had heard conversations around the dinner table about how under God got added to the Pledge of Allegiance during the McCarthy era, and that how the previous version never said under God, and how she heard her parents saying, we thought that was terrible to have in the school. So at school that week, she decided that she was not only not going to say under God, but she was going to raise her hand and tell everybody that they shouldn't be saying under God. And so got a note to talk to the teacher. I went in and talked to the teacher, and she said, why are you against God? And I said, do you know what I do for profession? And she did not understand. Well, we ended up having a great conversation and then a great relationship. And she was the person that ended up advocating and getting it changed so that under God was not said in the Pledge of Allegiance at that particular elementary school. So sometimes people just haven't thought about it.
Sometimes people will do the right thing if given the opportunity, so that one-to-one, human-to-human relationship, I think we should never underestimate it. David, we out of time?
I think we're ready to go. You know, I want to say one thing. There are no more passionate, brave souls than these 6 people who are willing to sit up here and bear their passion and tell us what they believe in answer to a newspaper editor. So that's tough. And Bob, thank you very much. You did a great job. First of all, I want to promote Join Us for Justice. Again, if questions come up about separation of church and state, if you're not sure, if you have a question about the First Amendment, if you have a problem in public school, if you have a question about what's going on in City Council, call us. We may be able to show you why it's not really a serious issue. We may find it is an issue. We can always bump this up to legal staff for Americans United in Washington. They're more than happy to look at these things. Not everything that happens is something that's worth fighting for. That's one thing we've had to learn. Sometimes you don't want to battle every windmill. It's not worth it. But there are some things that are more important, and there are some things that will affect the way we all live. So by all means, call us. Don't hesitate to.